right, so on today's episode, we are starting 3 different bike builds. First one's a CB750 single overhead cam. The second one's a CB650 1981, and then the third one's a 1979 CB750 dual overhead cam. The first video, we're going to kind of do a broad overview of the bike build, and then moving forward, an episode will only showcase one bike. And then that way we can put them into a playlist, and then these videos can be used for a guide or a how-to for that specific bike. And you know, it's not all mixed up. We don't typically take on customer builds, but in these cases, we took on the project. One of them we've had for I think 2 years now, so we need to kind of get moving along and get the project finished. The goal here is to produce a video every week and kind of keep the projects moving along. And by doing 3 of them, if you have a hang up on one of the projects, you can kind of move on to the next and just kind of keep things moving along. Anyway, let's talk about the bikes. All right, so the first project that we have here is a 1978 CB750 single overhead cam. This customer is out of Canada. He actually put the bike into the back of a rental SUV and then drove it down here and then jumped on a plane out of Richmond and flew back to Canada. And I think that was 2018 or 2019. So we've had the bike for a while. It's just now we have the opportunity to try and work on it and get it built for him. This was his father's bike, and his father has since passed away. So, this project for him has some sentimental value. The tank color is actually from his father's S10. This is the colors that he had on his pickup truck. So he wants to retain those colors. I'm not sure if we're keeping the original tank yet or not. The seat that he provided for us, these seats are pretty cool seats, but they're a little narrow. When I used this on my CB550, I took a couple of ribs out of it to get it wider and shorten it up a bit, because I think these are originally for an SR500, so they don't exactly fit. He also wants to integrate the taillight into the loop, but the shape of the loop, the standard loop definitely doesn't line up with it, and even our pointed loop isn't as pointed, or isn't pointed enough to exactly line up with this perfectly. So we might be making a seat for this, or trying to figure out something with tubing to make this work. He's got our oil tank. For the fork, he's running a CBR600 fork. He dropped that off as well. He had purchased some wheels, wheels for the front, which is a 17 3.5, so you can run a modern sport bike tire. And then in the rear, it's a 4 1/4, 17 as well. This bike will have clip-ons. We'll do the rear sets. Originally, for his build, he was using the original drum from the CB750, but if we're going to make this video and go through it, we may as well use it as an opportunity to show how the disc brake conversion works that we offer for this bike. That includes the hub and the rear sets and the brake master cylinder and the switch and everything. So it's a good opportunity to kind of showcase how we use that and how that's all assembled. We'll probably swap out the swing arm for a CB550 swing arm. I normally do that because it's a tubular construction, so it matches the frame a little better. I think it looks a little better. And then it's about 1 inch longer, so that kind of gets the rear tire out from up under the bike. Otherwise it kind of looks shoved in a little bit depending on where your seat falls. So I just like the look of it, so I think I'll go ahead and do that as well. They're pretty cheap on eBay. I think you can find a swing arm for a CB550 for about 50 bucks. And since we got to powder coat everything anyway, it's kind of a why not. Got a rear fender going on here. I don't really know what we'll do with that, if you wanted to retain it or not. I'm not sure. It looks like almost like the stock fender was cut short and made work. Put our intake on it, on the carbs, the intake box. Originally, back when he started buying parts from us, I think this was 2015, 2016, we didn't have the fixed offset triples yet, so he doesn't have that. So we'll probably go ahead and make him a set of triples just to get the offset perfect, get a little more out of the steering. On a 17, on a CB750, like this, I'll probably push it up to a 35mm offset just to get a little bit of turning radius, and that still falls within roughly a 4-inch trail. So it'll retain the handling characteristics that you want, but give us a little bit more turning radius. I think that's it for this bike, and we'll move on to the next one. All right, so the next build we have here is a 1981 CB650. Customer that owns this bike, he is in the reserves. I guess he's in the military, but he's administering COVID vaccines, so it's taking up a bit quite a bit of his time. So he's not going to have the time to build this bike. And also I think he felt a little bit overwhelmed taking on the project. But you know, in his situation, I didn't mind helping him out, so we decided to take it on. I hadn't built a CB650, and there's a handful of parts, you know, like electronics trays, rear sets, stuff like that, that it would be nice to offer as a product. And so having the bike here and building it and getting to know the bike, you know, additional products that we can make. So this is kind of how he dropped it off. I think he had taken it apart, and there's just kind of a bunch of pieces here, but you know, most of them, other than the motor and frame, we're not really going to use, you know, like we're going to replace the wiring and all of that kind of thing. So it doesn't really matter. This tail section here is going to be kind of unique. It goes up the way that it kicks up. I'm thinking about just kind of removing it completely and making the tubing straight so we can get more of that classic look. And also to give us a little more lift out of the rear, probably, I don't know, maybe 2 inches. We can get some lift the back end, get a little bit of rake to the bike. First thing that we're going to do is get the tires mounted. On this bike, he's a taller guy, so he's running 18s. We're going to put the Pirelli tires on here that are kind of, they're more sporty. You know, normally in an 18, they tend to be cruiser tires, but the tires that we picked out for this, and I'll list what they are. I don't remember off the top of my head what they are. They're on the way here, so we haven't received those yet. Running the 18s usually gives it more of a classic look, but that really wasn't what we were going for, so I'm putting kind of a sportier 18-inch tire. Sometimes it can be challenging to find a true sport bike tire in an 18. Typically that's reserved for 17s. We need to get a true sport tire. He's running a CBR front end. He already purchased that, so he dropped that off as well. You know, on this bike, like the last bike, he's got a fixed offset triple, and we'll put a 45mm offset on that to compensate for the 18-inch wheel. And then on the rear, he's running a 4 1/4 18, so that'll be a pretty wide tire. I'm not exactly sure if we're going to need an offset. The rear tire is a 160. Normally, on a 550, you would need an offset sprocket. On the later year CB750, you would not. So there's a good chance that we won't need an offset sprocket, but you know, once we get the swing arm mounted and get the wheel mounted up there, we'll know for sure. He's also running the disc conversion for this. We're not keeping the original hub, and actually these wheels I believe are, yeah, these are Comstar, the stamped Comstar, not the mag Comstar. So we're replacing that with a laced wheel, so that should look pretty cool. For the motor, you know, the motor's pretty much going to be stock. He said the motor was in good running condition. I think it has a little bit of a folded gasket somewhere that needs to be replaced, so we'll go ahead and take care of that for him. But as far as a complete motor overhaul, we will not be doing that. He's got some Hindle pipes for it that are pretty cool. Those are really nice. And I'm pretty sure he has some Keyhen carbs for it. Not some Keyhen, the CR carbs. So we'll be putting the CR carbs on it. But other than that, you know, the motor's going to be stock. And for the gas tank, I've got a CB500T tank. I'd like to try and fit up here, you know, kind of. This is I guess a replica CB750 tank. They're kind of, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, I like the more narrow tanks and how boxy the CB500 twin tank is. So I think that would look pretty cool. As far as the seat, you know, we have the 3 bikes builds going. I would like to see there's 2 things that I would like to see. So one is seeing CNC an aluminum seat, see how thin we can get it, you know, the cowling. I've never tried it. I've always kind of wanted to try it, so now's a good opportunity to give it a shot. The modeling of it can be a little tricky because you're using more organic surfaces, not necessarily straight lines. So that, you know, that's a bit of a challenge, which the same for the next version we want to do. The other thing I want to try is a 3D printed seat. 3D printed materials now, you can do, you know, carbon impregnated strand. And so the material is very rigid, pretty durable. So I'd like to see if we can't make a seat to match our loop exactly, and that would be pretty cool. And then just have a seat cushion upholstered. You know, as far as the shape of the seat or the actual seat that's 3D printed, you can sand that, and then you can you can use filler and stuff and make it really nice and smooth, and then you can have it painted. So I'm not by any means a sheet metal guy. I don't have any of that equipment, so obviously, you know, I want to build this using the equipment that I do have or the tools that I have access to. And also with the 3D printing, you can do funky things. Like, I'm thinking that if we did that, we could put like a battery box and incorporate it into the cowling, you know, a battery tray right into the cowling and hold it, so you don't have to put any other fixtures or, you know, brackets to hold it to the seat. Make a tray right inside of the cowling. So stuff like that, you know, I want to give that a shot. I've never done it before, so I think it'd be pretty cool. But I haven't decided which way I'm going to go. I want to do a CNC one and then a 3D printed one. I just don't know, you know, which bike I'm going to do what. We'll also have rear sets on here. We're doing clip-ons, you know, the Cognito brakes that go to the CBR, and that's pretty much it for this bike. All right. All right, so this is the last build we have here. This is a 1978 CB750 dual overhead cam. This bike was actually my brother's bike, or is my brother's bike. He bought it at auction, gosh, probably 6 or 7 years ago. I think he bought the thing for like $500. But we've just kind of taken it apart and used it like we did the fork swap video using this bike. We designed some intakes, the battery box, and the rear sets off of this bike, but we never actually built the bike. You know, we put the wheels on it. We did that. I don't remember if we did that to test it or if we were starting to build it, but anyway, this bike has 17s on it, 5-inch wide rear in the back, and then a 3.5 in the front, 17. And we're actually running a 170 tire on this. The cool thing about these bikes is that you know, if you're running a wider tire, is that you can run, gosh, probably all the way up to a 180 back here without any chain clearance issues. We're not offsetting the sprockets or anything. You know, sometimes we get asked if we have an offset sprocket for the dual overhead cam, but we don't, because you can run all the way up to, I'm going to guess, a 180 without offsetting it. So that's why we don't offer a sprocket for it. For this bike, we're going to be running a 2011 and up, a Gixxer fork. You know, this is a shop bike, so I think we have a couple less than perfect forks that we're gonna use for this build. For the tank, you know, the under this tank here, the framing is quite a bit different. It kind of kicks up and down, and it requires a really wide tank and a huge cutout. So you're not going to be able to swap this tank out with another CB model because it is so wide. Originally down here, you've got the tab for the side covers and the way that this kicks up. So using this tank, we're gonna have to get creative with how to make it, I don't know, look a little more elegant and blend into the seat well. Again, here on the back, I think I'm gonna cut off this tip up and then run it straight tube and raise the back end up. And then that'll allow me to use the loop and keep things a little more simple looking. We'll make the seat section for it. I'm not sure which way I'm gonna go. It's definitely gonna be, you know, either the 3D printed or a CNC'd one. I really like to do both, so I just need to pick which bike I'm gonna do what where. This tank's got some cool ribbing up here that it'd be nice to kind of replicate that on the cowling and keep that flowing through the bike. Running clip-ons, hadn't really made a final decision, but there are some clip-ons sitting here, so I'd imagine that that's what we're gonna do. And like all the other ones, we'll be rewiring it from scratch. I don't think there's anything particularly odd about this bike as far as the electronics go. Should be pretty straightforward. And that's it for these. And we'll see where they go.